Welcome to the Inspire to Invest podcast, where we're sharing stories from real estate investors and how investing has changed their lives. This episode of the Inspire to Invest podcast has been brought to you by the Wealth Club. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inspire to Invest. I have Stefanie Berry here with me from Caledon, Ontario, and she jumped into self-employment after having her second child and deciding that the rat race was no longer for her. So she combined her 10 years experience as a CPA with her love of real estate investing to start Real Estate Investing Finance, a fractional CFO accounting firm. And now she's on a mission to educate and serve the real estate investing community through financial literacy and financial management. So thank you very much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you? Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I do resonate with your story because after I had my daughter, I definitely decided that I didn't want to go back into events and, I had my own business for 18 years and I just knew it wasn't scalable having a small family and, wanted to kind of rebalance. So I can completely understand where you're coming from. But with regards to your story, can you talk a little bit about where the real estate investing component comes into it? Because obviously you were focused more on finance. So how did you kind of marry those two industries together?
Yeah, so I am a real estate investor myself. I've been investing in real estate for the last 10 years. I started, just sort of, I guess, how every person starts, buying their first home for their family and just having dreams of something bigger. And so my first property that I purchased, I ended up flipping it. Then we ended up buying a property where we added an additional unit and we started renting it out. And so my eyes started to open up to the opportunities in real estate investing.
Yeah.
I also went heavily into private lending. I know you're a big fan of that as well. And so I did a bunch of that. I started to get into BRRRR projects and GP and LP arrangements.
Yeah.
So I started to really get into real estate investing and really seeing, the generational wealth that I was creating, as well as the additional income streams. And I really thought that was something that was good for me to continue to do because it helped to protect me should anything happen to my job.
Yeah.
And so with that whole experience, coupled with my corporate finance experience, I had this burning desire to be an entrepreneur. And so when I was digging deep and trying to figure out, well, how can I serve others? I thought, well, based on my finance knowledge, I saw there was a huge gap in the real estate investing community.
Yeah.
It seemed like real estate investors absolutely hated managing the finance component of their business. And it was
Yeah.
actually the area that I loved the most.
Yeah.
So I was like, why not bring my expertise directly to real estate investors so that they could help to protect their assets and their wealth and
Yeah.
to just ensure that whatever that they were building, that they were managing it properly.
Yeah. And I think that's so important because sometimes people dive in head first. And one thing that I'm even surprised by with the masterminds I'm in and the community that I'm in is that some of them really lack the business acumen and just some of the foundational things that I think you really require to build strategically and to be successful. Because if you don't set it up, the right way early on, it can create fractures and issues later on as you continue to grow and scale. So I think that's really important to focus on.
Yes, definitely. It definitely snowballs. Like if I can help beginner real estate investors, I feel great doing that because I know as they scale, they'll take those same systems and tools that I've introduced to them, and it will scale with them. And
Yeah.
so it's so much harder to do it once you're already large and things are out of control, and
Yeah.
to kind of unravel all the issues.
Yeah.
So it's great to start when you're smaller.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, well, I guess one thing, like I've actually never heard of what a fractional CFO is. So maybe you can actually
Yes.
talk about what that is.
Yes, and I think this is very common. I get this question a lot. So a fractional CFO is just think about how every big company has a CFO, and a CFO stands for Chief Financial Officer.
Yeah.
It's an executive position similar to like a CEO, but the CFO manages the whole finance component of your business. And so for small and medium-sized businesses, having a CFO is sort of out of reach because they come with a big price tag.
Yeah.
Fractional CFO is able to help small and medium-sized businesses on a part-time basis at the fraction of the cost.
Okay. Got it.
Able really to get that strategic guidance and the finance support that are typically not available to you, but is now available to you if you work with a fractional CFO. So
Yeah.
it's a great concept.
Yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of people also do. Like, they're not necessarily big enough to have like a full-time bookkeeper or a full-time accountant. So obviously you bring in these different people, maybe you need 10 hours a week as opposed to 40 or something like that. So that makes perfect sense.
Exactly.
Now, as you continue to kind of grow your business, you touched on some of the different real estate investments that you were part of. What would you say you've enjoyed the most or found to be most beneficial to you?
That is a really good question. I would say that for me, I haven't been like a one strategy person. I know some people suggest, find one strategy that works for you and then rinse
Yeah,
and repeat. That's never been how I have viewed it, especially since I'm a big proponent on diversification. So I like to try a little bit of everything. So I'm not sure if I would really push anything that I've done. I did what I needed to do in the moment that made sense for me in that moment.
yeah,
And so I was all about unlocking opportunities for us to live our life better, my family to live my life better. And so when we had that first property and we wanted to flip it, it was because we were looking for a bigger home because we were starting a family. So
yeah,
we flipped it for that reason to grab, to force the value up, grab additional equity and put it into the next home.
yeah,
And then, I started to think ahead and I was saying, okay, well, now that, we have our first daughter, we're going to start having to pay for daycare costs. How can I offset that cost? Well, I'm going to put in a basement suite and I'm
yeah,
going to have that tenant pay for my child's daycare.
yeah,
So that's what I did there. And so as I went through life, I used real estate investing to unlock a better life for my family. And I feel like I continue to do that in different strategies.
yeah.
So that's one thing I always suggest when I talk to people. It's like pick the strategy that makes sense for you, for what you need, and for the goals that you're trying to achieve. Like you
Yeah.
need to align the two. It's not just about blindly choosing something that, maybe everybody's doing.
Yeah, I know that makes perfect sense. Now, when you look back at the different things that you've done, is there anything that stands out to you as something that you're most proud of or something you feel like is your most successful investment?
So I would say, and this is an interesting one too, because even when you say success, I wouldn't even know if I would define this success as in a dollar figure, but this is success now that I look back and I'm just proud of what we've done. And so after our second home, we had purchased a 1 acre property with my parents.
Hmm.
And so it was a joint purchase. And the reason we did it was kind of like a house hacking methodology.
Yeah,
We wanted a big lot. Obviously, we had other properties still. We didn't want to sell them, and so it made a lot of sense for us to purchase it with my parents. I'm an only child, so it was about supporting each other while I had a young family and while they aged. Also, an option for us to house hack
yeah,
that we can keep costs down. And also, I call this like our generational home. So
yeah,
I plan to continue to pass this property down to my kids, and I hope they do the same.
yeah,
So it's something that I feel really proud of that we were able to secure like an amazing property like this, and we love living in this area. We're surrounded by nature, and it's just it checked all the boxes in so many different ways. And I don't even think about the money aspect of it. It was
yeah.
everything else that made it feel successful.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, I'm walking distance to my mom, so I know how beneficial that can be, especially as you start to grow your family.
Yeah.
Now, I guess on the flip side to that question, what would you say are some of the obstacles that you've faced and like some of the biggest challenges?
Yeah, so I think similar to a lot of people, the last couple of years have been extremely challenging. I would say that I've always stayed extremely close to my numbers, obviously, because that's my favorite aspect of managing my properties and my business.
Yeah,
And it's still been hard, even though I have been in the numbers and I've
yeah,
been monitoring everything and looking for areas that I can improve and trying to cut costs, trying to increase my income and doing all the things, but it's still hard. And so I just think that the last couple of years have been a huge learning experience. That I would say this is my first downturn, and
yeah,
so I'm taking away so many learning lessons from this
yeah,
about having bigger reserves. I had reserves. I now think I should have had bigger reserves.
yeah,
Maybe pivoting faster, right? Like when
yeah,
you started to see things getting tough, well, what
yeah,
could I have done earlier rather
yeah.
than wait.
Yeah.
So I think the last couple of years have definitely tested us all
Yeah.
as real estate investors.
Yeah, and I think that's something that someone had said to me not too long ago, just in terms of, when they go into a mortgage for their rental property, especially on the commercial side, that they go in fixed, because at least that way you know that you're stable for a period of time. And I think a lot of the real estate investors took advantage of those really low interest rates that were
Yeah,
2% or something like that at a variable. And even if they did decide to lock in, that's still probably at least 5% or something like that, right? So it's still considerably higher than what they would have gone into it. And in some instances, maybe they didn't even lock in, so they could be sitting at an even higher rate right now, right? So I
that's
think
great.
that made a lot of sense for me. Like, I think when you are in your family home, that's one thing, but when you are dealing with like a much larger asset, and just like much larger budgets and numbers and stuff like that, you just have to consider all those things. Like, no one expected this, but that's the whole thing. You have to plan for the unexpected, right?
Exactly. And I think that, I looked at the same type of thing that you just mentioned, like, should I lock in now? Should I lock in now? Should I? And I think no one thought it would get this bad, right? But
Yeah.
if you've never gone through it, you would have never experienced that, right? And so now definitely, the next go around, I'll definitely be more aggressive with, pivoting faster if I needed to,
Yeah.
because I'll remember how this felt.
Yeah,
So
no, absolutely. And that's the thing. I think the last downturn was, most people talk about 2008, but a lot of the investors actually started at that point because that's where everything bottomed out and they built up from there, right? So there are the
yes,
people that have been through
exactly.
those cycles or even going back even further. But for us, some of us started after that point, right? So I can understand where
Exactly.
this is just uncharted territories in a lot of ways.
Yes.
I know that you're a big believer in educating yourself and mentorship and things like that. So when you look back at the different circles that you've run in, is there anything that you would say stands out to you as the best advice that you've received?
Best advice. Honestly, I'm extremely grateful and extremely proud of the fact that, like, my parents really instilled in me financial education, and I feel like it's something that I've taken with me my entire life, and I feel so privileged to have had that beginning. So I think that's actually what I feel the most proud of, and that has helped me. My dad was an accountant as well. My mom was in banking, and so there was a lot of exposure and talk about money openly and
Yeah.
freely. And I think that's so incredibly important. And this is part of what I do, and I want to do more of this, is just breaking down the barriers and just talking about it, because I feel like that's the way we learn. That's the way that we can understand other different perspectives and how other people are doing things,
Yeah.
and just improve our own situations. And I feel like, I just hope that continues to happen. And if I can help at least one person by, me talking about my story, or talking about how I do things, and opening up people's eyes to different ways of doing things, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And on that note, we're just going to take a really brief break for a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. Welcome to the Wealth Club, an exclusive community dedicated to elevating your journey towards financial freedom, well-being, and success. The journey to 1% starts here. Join like-minded leaders and commit to growth for the mind, body, bankroll, and soul. Learn all the proven techniques to change your life forever with direct access to a massive team of more than 10 tried and true experts. Moreover, members enjoy priority access to investment opportunities, job openings, and partnerships within the community. For just $1 a day, members gain entry to specialized forums covering a wide spectrum of fields, discover diverse income streams, new opportunities, collaborations, and employment. Partake in weekly Zoom calls with our team and join monthly live Q&A sessions. Compete and win cash prizes. Active members top the leaderboard for monthly rewards. Ready to get started? Join today to unlock your true potential. To sign up, go to scroll.com/The Wealth Club. Thanks again for following along with this episode of Inspired to Invest. In addition to real estate, investing, and running my own brand experience agency for 18 years, I also published a book called The Accidental Entrepreneur in October of 2021. This is my story, and it chronicles how I turned tragedy into triumph to embrace my destiny in entrepreneurship. If you're interested in picking up a copy, you can find the link at serenahomesrealtor.com, and you can also find my link tree with all of the retailers in the details below. Thanks again for your support. Have you always wanted to invest in real estate to build long-term wealth? Start today with just $10,000. Introducing Honeytree Real Estate Investment Trust. Welcome to the Temple Building, a mixed-use 0.48-acre site with 25 residential tenants and 5 retail spaces. In the heart of Brantford, Ontario, this property was purchased for $5.8 million and was recently appraised for $6.470 million and an instant investor upside of $670,000. Honeytree is taking on a light value-add strategy, adding AC, laundry, and Energy Star-efficient appliances. Coming soon to Honeytree Real Estate Investment Trust. For more information, go to honeytreegrove.ca. Inspired to Invest is proud to support the Beyond Success program. In today's complex world, it's absolutely crucial for our youth to learn how to take charge of their financial future. We believe that every young person deserves access to accurate, practical financial information. Designed to bridge the gap, the Beyond Success program leverages a comprehensive educational bootcamp to equip young minds with essential financial literacy skills. At Beyond Success, it's not just about teaching financial literacy, it's also about fostering a foundation for a prosperous and empowered future. Join us. Together we can build a brighter financial future for the next generations. Join us. Together we can build a brighter financial future for the next generations. Hey everybody, welcome back to Inspired to Invest. I have Stefanie Berry here with me today from Real Estate Investing Finance, a fractional CFO firm. And she's talking about her experience kind of growing her portfolio while she was growing her family and then launching her own business to support other real estate investors. I guess one thing I always like to ask people is, what's the craziest thing that's happened to you as a real estate investor and entrepreneur so far?
So I would say the craziest thing has just been taking the leap out of corporate finance. It was a huge decision for me. I was coming off of my second maternity leave. I had started up my business. I had some clients. I didn't feel fully ready. I don't know if you ever feel fully ready. And so, just taking that leap out and not having that, security of of a salary was
Yeah.
a huge thing for me.
Yeah.
But now that I've done it, I don't think I would have done it any other way, because I feel like you thrive. You end up thrusting yourself into resiliency and figuring it out. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's what you just have to do. And I think as entrepreneurs, we're very good at that, and we don't give ourselves enough credit.
Yeah.
So I think that's been the hardest, because obviously it's a roller coaster ride, right? Amazing things, and then challenges, and then roadblocks, and overwhelm, and all of the feelings at once. But you just keep working at it.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Now, I guess in terms of lessons, is there anything that you look back on your experiences and think like, I wish I knew then what I know now, or is there anything that you think you would have done differently now knowing like where we're at today?
Yeah, so I think it's like what we chatted about with the last couple of years. I think if had I known what I know now, I would have set aside more reserves. And so that's definitely something that I suggest to my clients as, interest rates start coming down, as cash flow starts coming back in.
Yeah.
As much as it's tempting to just, want to take the cash flow and run, because you haven't seen it potentially in so long, definitely building up your reserve fund, and having it be more robust is something that I'm suggesting. There's different types of reserve funds you can have, vacancy reserves, capital improvement reserves, things, even an emergency fund, or even seasonal expenses, things that come up once a year that come and surprise you that you might not have cash flow for.
Yeah.
These are all things that you should be planning ahead, putting that money aside. A little bit every month is way more manageable on your cash flow than having these big surprises come in. So that's something I would definitely do. And then, like I mentioned, just learning to pivot faster, right? And so that's definitely something, if this happens again, that I will be, looking at things faster, reaching out to people for support faster, getting my options out there and making a move, instead of kind of waiting around. So those are the things.
When you talk about your business and the different real estate investors that you work with, what would you say is kind of like a common mistake that you tend to notice and then try to go about fixing, or, just something that you think like someone starting out should really have their ear to the ground more closely on?
Yeah, so for beginner real estate investors, I think definitely getting the right tools and systems in place to manage your finances right from the start is crucial. So making sure that you're setting up a separate bank account is absolutely number one thing you should be doing. And then, getting in the habit of tracking your finances on a monthly basis. That to me is a non-negotiable. And so you definitely should be sitting down and tracking everything that's going through the separate bank account for your properties. Having multiple bank accounts for different properties is also very helpful
Yeah.
to keep things separate so that you can see what's going on. And staying consistent on that and making sure that you're putting aside, the proper documentation so that you're ready when it comes to tax time.
Yeah.
Um, that's that's the main thing for the beginner real estate investors. Once you start leveling up, I think the big thing that I notice is people think they can self-manage longer than they should be self-managing. And
Yeah.
so I get a lot of people coming to me that are in full like overwhelm and meltdown mode because they're now into, 3, 4, 5 properties and they have no idea where their finances are anymore. They're way behind.
Yeah.
They don't have a bookkeeper. They're still trying to manage in like spreadsheets, and it's just it's out of control. And
Yeah.
so at that point in time, it's even harder for a finance professional to come in because now we have to clean everything up. It's going to cost them more to do that, and then get the systems where they're supposed to be, and then get onto a smooth run with them. So I think those are the two big things.
And I mean, it's even harder to just recognize things if you let too much time go by, right? I mean, I
Yes.
had my own business for 18 years, so I was really diligent about reconciling my accounts every month and stuff like that. But at
Yes.
least you could acknowledge like what those expenses were if you're doing it on that kind of a consistent basis, as opposed to
Exactly.
after you're like,
What is
someone was talking about, for example, that they hadn't looked at their credit card statements in months. And they're like, they didn't know that something had renewed at a high amount or this or that. And it's
that?
like, what do you mean a few months? And this is someone that's quite experienced, but I was very surprised to hear that he doesn't look at things like that. Cause I look at my credit card probably weekly and I just like I don't let it to be a giant amount at the end of the month, right? So I'm pretty diligent about paying it regularly, which is also good for your credit and things like that. And then
Right.
I think the other thing that I adopted when I had my business is that I found a lot of the accounting softwares didn't allow you to project appropriately because we would put the invoices in, but it didn't really capture all the expenses you're expecting to come out. So
Okay.
one thing that we adapted, and it was actually in part of hiring a bookkeeper,
Mhm.
I had a number of account managers that had to, provide details of who was going to get paid, and that could be upwards of a couple hundred people weekly. So we had
Mhm.
this spreadsheet where we would just identify, like, we know $10,000 is coming out in 2 weeks for payroll for this event. So
Mhm.
at least I could look at, what's in the bank, what's coming in, and then our spreadsheet would kind of capture the high level numbers of what's coming out over a period of time, but I could literally look at that and be like, okay, we've got 6 months of operating costs. And
Yes.
obviously there could be some variables and stuff like that, but it gave me at least a general idea of where we stood in terms of the health of the business and
Right.
profitability and making decisions and stuff like that, right? And I think if people are just making decisions blindly, it can feel like you have a lot of money, but if you're not
Yes.
considering those expenses, then you could actually be in the negative and you wouldn't even know it, right? So I think people need to
Exactly.
be very cautious of budgeting appropriately and leaning on the professionals. And I was guilty of not hiring a bookkeeper for 10 years. And then I did change my life, got back probably 20 hours a week and stuff like that. So,
Yes.
I think you do have to consider like all of those things. And when you're starting out, yes, you want to save on costs, but saving on time allows you to focus on sales, which brings more money in. So there's a
Yes.
lot of different things that you can consider when it comes to all of that stuff. Now, in
Right.
terms of where you're at, what would you say is next for you? And is there a particular financial freedom number that you have in mind that you're working towards?
So next for me, I'm definitely working quite hard on my business and scaling my business. And so I've been working in different avenues, creating so I have some online programs that I help beginner real estate investors so I can make that accessible for them.
Yeah,
I've been working quite heavily on some projects lately. So a lot of real estate investors are looking for a finance professional to just give an overview of how their portfolio is doing and provide some options for next steps, especially
yeah,
as we exit, this kind of hard time. They want to know like, what should I do next?
yeah,
And so I've been doing a lot of those type of projects. But my main focus is on the ongoing CFO services that I provide on a monthly basis. And those
yeah,
are typically to medium size investors, think like 8 to 10 sort of properties that really they want a fully hands-off approach to their finances. And so I've been obviously that takes up the majority of my time.
Yeah.
In terms of you mentioned like a like a fire
Financial freedom
number.
goal. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've kind of moved away from like targeting a specific number. Again, for me, it's all about like unlocking the life that I never want to retire from. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to create the lifestyle that I want. And
Yeah.
so ultimately what I want is like right now I'm not working full-time hours, and that's never I never want to go back to working full-time hours because I want to be out there enjoying life, doing traveling, and being able to take advantage of different hobbies.
Yeah.
And so I just want to continue to scale my business. I would love to bring in other people that are looking for the same sort of lifestyle, want to make an impact and but still have the freedom to live. So I would love to build out my team a little bit more. And then just I can have a little bit more opportunity to scale down and just be
Yeah.
more present with my family and do some more things that I love. I would love also to get a little bit further into educating financial literacy for kids.
Yeah.
Obviously, for having kids myself, like it's top of mind.
Yeah.
So I'd love to get into more of those initiatives.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's on the horizon for me.
Well, I can make an introduction for you. There are some investors in my network that you might know, but they have a program specifically on financial literacy for children, and they go into these high needs areas and stuff like that. So
Yes,
it's
that would
called
be
More to Give.
great.
And yeah, I can definitely share a little bit more information of that when we go offline.
Awesome. That would be
Yeah.
great.
So I guess in terms of motivational quotes, obviously the name of this podcast is Inspired to Invest. So I like to ask people what kind of quotes motivate and inspire them.
Um, I think there was one that I used to live by, and it was I'm trying to remember it now. It's live your life steeped in experiences, because I love tea. So it was a play on steeped. And
Yeah.
because I always believe in the best investments being investments in experiences,
Yeah.
that was something that that really resonated with me,
Yeah.
because
Awesome. I
that
love
I feel
that.
is that's the part that's living life, right? It's the
Yeah.
experience piece.
Yeah, that's for sure. Now, for anyone that wants to learn more about your services or any opportunities to work with you, what's the best way for people to find you?
Sure, yeah. So I'm on Instagram. My handle is at reifinance.ca. And then my website is the similar reifinance.ca. Those are the two best ways to get a hold of me.
Perfect. So we'll include that in the show notes below. Of course, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to chat with us today. I think it is a really important topic of conversation for anyone that has tuned in. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. You can also follow along with us on social at Inspire to Invest Podcast. And remember, when you invest in yourself, the sky's the limit. Thanks again. Thank you to the Wealth Club for bringing you this episode of Inspired to Invest. The views represented on this podcast are for general information only and does not constitute investment or other professional advice or an offering of securities. The host and guests featured on Inspired to Invest make no representations as to the performance of any particular investment. Should you decide to make an investment, you are responsible for conducting your own review and analysis. It is recommended that you obtain independent legal, accounting, and tax advice from licensed professionals.